Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome along to today's webinar on building your resilience and resourcefulness. Apologies for the slightly odd start to the webinar, just a couple of minor technical issues with my video. I don't know why. I mean, how could anything be wrong with this? But anyway, there you have it. For those who haven't been on one of our webinars before, welcome along to today. My name's Graham Gerstenberg. I run Magical Learning with my wife, Danette. And for the next hour, I'm going to try and entertain you, educate, inform, engage you in the content we have around resilience and resourcefulness. If this is your first time on Zoom, a couple of quick things. Normally, audio is muted by default, but we would love to engage with you through the Q&A and the chat function. So depending on the device that you have joined the session on, either tap the menu button or there's a small toolbar at the bottom of your screen which has a Q&A button, and there's also a chat option there. So we have some questions for you as we're going through today, and I'd love to get your engagement in that. If you have any questions as we're going through, please feel free to use the chat. If there are questions that you think might be relevant or helpful for the broader audience, again, also feel free to use the Q&A button on your device, and I'll make sure that we address those questions before we finish today. So, happy Wednesday, by the way. Excited about this. The outline for today is pretty much this. I want to start by just talking a little more about resourcefulness and resilience and why those are so important in the world that we're currently experiencing, because it's interesting times in lots of ways. We're also going to talk about how our brains react in challenging times. So when we're faced with a lot of uncertainty, disruption, change, etc., sometimes it can be helpful to understand just what's going on between our ears, and we have some tips on how you can help manage that more effectively. We're also going to talk about some tips to help focus your thoughts, focus your brain so that you can be calmer and also be more productive, particularly from a work perspective. And also look at some tools to help you become more resilient and resourceful over the coming hours, days, weeks, months. Who knows where this will end? It's an experience, it's a journey. It's interesting. I like to start with a quote. Normally I like to start with a quote. This one from the author, Jody Coult. Human capacity for burden is like bamboo. It's far more flexible than you'd ever believe at first glance. And I guess if we had an overarching theme for today's webinar, it is we have, perhaps not infinite, but we have incredible capacity for courage and curiosity, and for being able to find a way forward through times that initially we may feel this is just not going to work. So hang on to that thought, we'll come back later. Before we dive into the content in detail, but the first exam for the day, I'm not sure whether you're aware, but we have multiple exams throughout this webinar. And the first one is a question for you. And again, I would love to get your thoughts using the chat function on your device. And that is, what does resilience actually mean for you today, in particular, right now? I'll give you a couple of minutes now. Just please feel free to drop your thoughts into the chat box. Mary, thank you, Mary. Being agile. Great to see you on the webinar today. I appreciate that. Thank you. Being agile. Very true. Well, Danette, thank you. Being able to deal with what is going on. Awesome. Any other thoughts? Hi, great to see you on the webinar, Di. Welcome back. Great to see you again. Thank you. Being able to overcome, adapt, and improvise. I like that. We'll talk about the adaptability piece in resourcefulness a little later on. From Natalie. Hi, Natalie. The ability to remain calm in an environment of change and uncertainty, in brackets, the world. That's excellent. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. So here's one way of looking at resilience, the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or even significant sources of threat. So I think there's a lot of your responses come through in that. Adaptability on one level is so important today. And when we think about resilience, it is in part our capacity not just to be able to drag ourselves out of bed in the morning and drag ourselves through the day. Because I think there needs to be some positive sense or some sense that there is a positive outcome or there is a positive meaning to everything that we're experiencing at the moment. So for me, resilience is a lot more than just being stubborn, if you like. I wanted to just do some quick myth busting, if we can, around resilience, because I believe there are some interesting definitions or stories or beliefs around resilience. The first is people with high resilience never feel stressed. They never get down. They never feel like they're overwhelmed and they can't cope. That's not true. Some of the most resilient people on the planet, and I know some of them, do feel down, they do get overwhelmed, they absolutely do feel stressed from time to time. They have a very healthy, positive way, not only of thinking about and responding to circumstances, but they also have sufficient confidence to be able to put their hands up sometimes and say, I need a hand. I can't do this on my own. And again, if we wanted to wrap another theme around today, it is that we are all in this together and we will get through this together. And we cannot do it solo. So staying connected is really important as well. So myth number one, never get stressed. Yes, they do. Another myth around resilience is that people with high resilience, a bit like the theme song to the original Lego movie, everything's awesome, life's just fantastic. Woo-hoo! That's not true. It's not true. It's not like I just walk around all day being sunshine on legs. Sometimes I have to work on it. Resilient people feel down. Resilient people have days and moments when they feel, again, stressed, worn out, tired, etc., etc. They just have a healthy way of being able to bounce back. Resilience is a lot more than just grit. It's not just being bloody-minded or pig-headed and being able to just get up and do it all over again. There's got to be a positive sense of meaning in what we're doing. And that's usually important in the context of resilience. Resilient people don't need help from others, not true. And the last one was resilient people basically just suck it up. Don't just deal with it, build a bridge, get over it, deal with it, move on. Not true. Not true. Resilient people are often quite capable and quite confident in being able to ask for help. And they also realise that there are times when you just need to stop and refresh, reset, re-energise, refuel, do all of those rewords, and then move on. So, let's talk about why resilience is important in the context of everything that's going on at the moment. Some of the things we know from relatively recent science, and particularly neuroscience around human beings and resilience. When we have higher resilience, it actually helps our brain function more efficiently, more effectively. It improves learning, academic achievement. This is really important in the context of us as parents or co-parents, siblings, responsible adults for children. One of the other things that we can do if we have children at home with us at any point is to help maintain our own resilience first so we can help them build great resilience, because that is going to help them through the days, weeks, months and years ahead and pretty much for the rest of their lives. If we can set our kids up when they're younger to be able to maintain their own resilience, that's a beautiful gift. So firstly, it helps us function better and we also learn more effectively. Secondly, it actually reduces absenteeism. And I had a little chuckle in the back of my mind at the moment. I'm thinking, yeah, but most people are actually being told that they have to stay home and work from home. So how can you be absent? Well, you still can. So we do know again that higher resilience means that I am more positively inclined to do the hard stuff and to turn up, to show up even when I might not necessarily feel like it. People with higher resilience are less likely to engage in really risky behaviour, which is important for us as adults, also important in the context of helping our children, teenagers, etc., maintain more resilience. We tend not to go down the risky path. Resilient people are more involved in community and family activities. It's easier for us to stay connected and engaged with other people because we're taking care of ourselves first. And interestingly, people with higher rate of resilience over time also have a longer lifespan. And that's right now, it's probably something for all of us to think about. And the last one around why resilience matters is it's actually good for both brain and physical health. But maintaining high resilience enables us to deal with potentially stressful situations in a more calm manner, which means that our body isn't always flooding with adrenaline and norepinephrine and cortisol, and our brain is not being overwhelmed or overloaded, and our adrenal gland isn't slipping into fatigue mode because we're constantly stressed. So building resilience is a win-win for us as human beings. Some of the things that can help influence your level of resilience is having a sense of autonomy. Now, this is interesting at the moment. So if we think of autonomy, if I were to ask all of you who work for an organisation where you have a manager, and I were to ask you, how many of you, show of hands, pretty easy to see now, show of hands for how many of you love being micromanaged? Now, generally, if I ask that question in any context with any audience, I don't get any serious responses because we don't like it. Micromanaging is one form of removing our sense of autonomy because it robs us of the sense that I have control over my existence. I have some control over my work and when I do my work and how I do it and who I do it with. So having a sense of autonomy is one of the things that helps us maintain more resilience. If you work for an organisation or you're in a country or in a region at the moment where you're being told that you must work from home, be mindful that that can reduce your sense of autonomy because it's no longer a choice for you. It's not like, well, I decided I'm going to stay home and work from home this week because one of the kids is not well and I just think it'll be easier. This is quite different. So having a sense of autonomy is important to us in terms of our resilience. Excuse me, our self-esteem is also a good indicator or influencer of resilience levels, as is having a sense of optimism. Now, at the moment, there are a lot of people who would say, well, what's to be optimistic about? The world's gone to hell in a handbasket. You know, the death rate continues to climb, the number of infections continues to climb, I can't go anywhere, I'm locked in an apartment, and I don't even want to go outside in case somebody gets too close to me, and I feel stressed every time I go to the supermarket. There's a lot of reasons, potentially, for us to not to be optimistic at the moment. And at the same time, if I asked you to raise your hand, if you woke up this morning, I'm reasonably sure that there would be lots of hands up right now. That's something to be optimistic about. So there are a lot of things that we can think about that, you know, not everything has changed, and we will get through this. Maintaining an optimistic view, a positive sense of our existence on this planet is something that helps maintain higher resilience. Excuse me. Another one, just going to have a quick drink, is our level of happiness and our emotional intelligence, and both of these are linked. If I find opportunities to be grateful during the day and just to choose to be happy more of the time, it also helps maintain higher resilience for me, which is really important. Having a sense of meaning and purpose in our life is also hugely important. There's a really good TED talk by a lady, Emily Esterhazy-Smith, who talked about realising one day that just being happy wasn't really enough. So she went back to uni and did a whole bunch of study, and what came out of that, apart from a TED talk, was a book. And what she found, that having a sense of purpose or meaning in our life is much more invaluable over time than just being happy. So meaning and purpose, how do I attach that to what I do? Humour is also spectacularly good. One of the reasons I am so ridiculously funny pretty much all of the time, even though nobody else realises that, is because it helps make me feel good. And sometimes, if a joke lands for somebody else and they laugh, it makes them feel good as well. Laughter really is great medicine. And the last influencer around our resilience levels is altruism and compassion. Again, you could say compassion is part of altruism. Altruism, what does it mean? It is doing something for the benefit of other human beings without any expectation whatsoever of them returning the favour or being recognised or rewarded for it, and doing it because we believe that it is the right thing or good thing to do as a human being. All of these things can help maintain high resilience levels for us. So, what do you do to build your resilience? Meditation. If you haven't tried it, I would love for you to do it. If there was just one thing that you could do that had a huge impact on your existence on the planet right now, in the next month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, for the rest of your life, it would be meditation. It is a relatively simple practice. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to learn how to do it, but it does require discipline, and we just have to stick with it. It doesn't work just like that in 5 days. So, and I have some really good friends who've been meditating consistently for 30 or 40 years who will still have a meditation practice from time to time, and it just doesn't work for them, and that's okay. Meditation is beautiful. Another way that we can help build more resilience is by using things like reframing. So reframing is firstly being aware of the language that we may be using around situations, around something that's just happened. Because the language that we use is a reflection of what we're thinking. We generally don't speak unless we think it first. So if our language is, oh, this is a disaster, this is a catastrophe, this is terrible. One of the things we're doing is like giving our brain, it's like rubbing the lamp with the genie coming out saying, what is your command? What is your wish? If I say this is a catastrophe, my brain literally goes into, okay, I'm just going to look for evidence to back up your belief that this is a catastrophe. So if I reframe it, something that's happened, particularly was unexpected, and perhaps ask some better questions rather than just labelling it as a catastrophe. Well, that's unexpected. I didn't see that coming. I wonder what else is possible now. One of the examples I used in a webinar with some clients last night was Benjamin Zander. Ben Zander was the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra for a long, long time. He has a TED talk which is absolutely worth watching. One of Ben's favourite phrases is, how fascinating. It's just incredible. Danette and I were blessed to be able to watch him present at a conference in Toronto a few years back, and he's just an amazing human being. But his response to what a situation somebody else would see as a disaster or a catastrophe, 30 seconds before the curtain's due to go up, somebody trips over in the orchestra pit and breaks an instrument and does something else. And Ben's response is, how fascinating, which is brilliant because it literally is reframing it. Oh no, that's a disaster too. Oh, how fascinating. I didn't see that coming. I wonder what else is possible. So reframing can be really powerful for us. Another thing that can help build resilience is maintaining social connections. And we've known for a long time, human beings are tribal, herd creatures. We greatly value a sense of belonging, whether it's belonging to a family, to a community, to a village, a sense of belonging to a football club or a sporting club, some sense of shared identity. It's really, really powerful for us. So maintaining social connections is hugely important. And in the context of everything that's happening at the moment, some of us perhaps need to work a little harder to make sure that we do stay connected. And we'll talk a little later about some of the things that you can do to make that happen. Yeah, Zoom's a great platform. There are plenty of others out there. You can use Skype still works, Microsoft Teams, Slack, WebEx, GoToMeeting, Messenger, Google Hangouts, wherever possible, FaceTime. If you can connect with somebody else via video instead of just audio, do the video. It always works better. But make an effort to stay connected socially. If you're connecting with work colleagues on a regular basis because you are now working remotely, make sure that part of your connection time, preferably the first couple of minutes, is social. Ask them for how, check in with them, find out how they're going, what's happening for them at home, etc. So social connections are hugely important. Another thing that will help build your resilience is just being more positive. Now, I'm not suggesting that positive thinking, you just sit in the room and don't move and just think, oh, my life is fantastic, my life is wonderful, my life is absolute bliss and joy and butterflies and rainbows and dandelions and unicorns. Well, my life is. But if you just sit in a room and do that and nothing else, chances are it's really not going to improve your experience. But it's a great place to start. We still need to take action. We still need to do things to be able to move forward through the day. But positive thinking absolutely is going to help much more than thinking that this is the end of the world or something along those lines. Another thing, again, for building more resilience is just laughing. Excuse me. Find opportunities to talk to people who are funny. Watch funny movies. Whatever it happens to be, just find opportunities to laugh. Don't listen to any of my jokes. That's also a good way of laughing. Another great way of building more resilience is exercise and movement per se. I'm not suggesting that you need to commit to running a half marathon once you're actually allowed back out of the house, if that's not normally your thing, if you don't normally, but even just getting up and moving around. If you are not comfortable about leaving your residence, your dwelling most of the time, if that makes you feel anxious, then what are some of the exercises that you can do while you're at home just to get some exercise in? So, you could be doing push-ups against the kitchen bench or the bathroom cabinet. You can do push-ups on the floor, depending on your fitness or your health level. Get into a plank position. It's great for your core. There's a range of exercises, activities that you could do so that you're still moving, and they will help maintain higher resilience. And the last thing I wanted to mention on the resilience piece was sleep. Depending on who you talk to, there's been a lot of books written about sleep in the last decade, particularly in the Western world. We apparently are in the midst of a sleeplessness epidemic, as if we need another one. If you don't get consistently 6 to 7 and a half, 6 to 8 hours good sleep most nights, then with great love and respect, stop what you're doing and do something different. Again, the science behind the value to our brain health, to our emotional health, and also to our physical health from good sleep is overwhelming. So if you're not sleeping well, what do you need to do? If you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night and then your brain is instantly awake and it's just thinking about all of the stuff that's going on, try a couple of things. One, have a notebook on your bedside table and just write down all of the things that are going on in your head. It's like giving your conscious mind permission to let it go now because you've written it down, so it will still be there in the morning. Another thing you can try is using a meditation practice. The last thing at night to literally fall asleep to. So we use that technique with some of our clients, and they generally say that when they do that, they fall asleep relatively easily and they don't wake up during the night. So there are a number of things that you can do. Sleep is massively important. Sorry, I've just got a question from Danette. Can we let you know the titles recommended for TED Talks? Yes, I will. So what we're going to do after this is send you out a link to the recording as well as a copy of the slides. But one of the other things I will do, thank you for reminding me, is give you a list of the resources that we've mentioned in the TED Talk. So you don't have to worry about writing it down now. We will send you an email afterwards with links to the books, the videos, the TED Talks, etc. Thank you very much for asking me. I really appreciate that. Okay, this is my brain. It's pretty. It's huge. It's probably not to scale. I want to talk really quickly about the brain and how our brain reacts or responds to the environment that we're in at the moment, particularly how it responds to stress and threats. Some of you may have heard of a SCARF model. SCARF is, so this is a model developed by Dr. David Rock, who is the founder of the Neuro Leadership Institute. And it is, I find, a really helpful way of understanding how the human brain reacts when we're dealing with other human beings. So the SCARF is an acronym for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So these are like the 5 key areas or domains that our brain pays attention to when we're interacting with other people. As this is relevant when we're face-to-face, this is relevant when we're on a video call with somebody, when we're on the telephone, and to some extent it's also relevant when we get emails and text messages. The model is based on what neuroscientists have been saying for over a century is the fundamental organising principle of the human brain, which is the brain makes decisions that move it towards reward responses, things that make it feel good. So we like moving towards reward, and it likes moving away from threats. That's the default. Now, as we become aware of that, we can change that, but that's basically the default. So one of the challenges for many of us at the moment is we're being bombarded with information that our brain is interpreting as a threat. And another way of thinking about formatting is terrible. The way our brain pays attention to threats, there's another model that the Neuro Leadership Institute came out with, is the 3 levels of threat for human beings. Level 1 is where the threat is in the broader environment. So I'm aware of it, I've heard about it, maybe I saw or read something on the news or somebody told me about it, but it's sort of a long way away. So my brain pays a little bit of attention to it, but I've got a lot of other more important things to worry about. So probably the most relevant example of that at the moment for people on, say, in Australia and Western part of the world would be the coronavirus. When it was first made public, we understood that it was something that had been identified in a region in China, but it's on the other side of the world. Right now, it's sort of in our broader environment, not that big a deal. But the level 2 threat is when the threat moves closer to us. And this is when suddenly it's in our neighbourhood. So again, if we use the coronavirus as an example, suddenly it's moved out of China and it's pretty much in half of the countries on the planet, where still it's now in Australia, for argument's sake. And but still, it's now in my city. So they have identified people who have coronavirus. So I'm now at level 2. My brain is paying a lot more attention to anything relating to this virus. Whether I'm aware of it or not, my brain is paying a lot of attention to what's going on. But the other thing that's happening is that my adrenaline and cortisol levels are also rising. And this has a lot of implications for us in terms of how well we function. So one study found that elevated cortisol levels, particularly in our brain, lead to a drop in IQ of around 25% in just 7 minutes. And one of the reasons for that is a lot of the blood flow to the front part of our brain, which is the part we use most of the time when we're conscious, that blood flow starts getting stripped away. So suddenly we're at level 2 threat. It's close. My brain's paying a lot of attention to it. My anxiety and stress levels are starting to go up. If I'm not really resilient, this can have a massive impact on me. And then the worst is level 3. Level 3 is the threat literally is upon you. So for, again, using coronavirus as an example, this could be a colleague, a workmate, somebody who worked in the same building, someone who works for the same company. It could be a family member, a friend, but it's somebody that I know quite personally suddenly has been diagnosed with. So this is level 3. My brain is on constant alert. Constant alert. Cortisol, adrenaline levels have gone through the roof, and I am marinating in cortisol most of the day. So what? This is not a good place for us to be, for lots of reasons. When we're in a highly stressed state, we don't think clearly, we don't listen well, we find it really hard to communicate with others, and it is almost impossible for us to be compassionate, to be kind, or to empathise with other human beings. Because right now at level 3, we're literally in fight or flight. We are in survival mode. Our heart shuts down in terms of its ability to connect with other people. This includes the people that we might be living with at the time. It can include colleagues, friends, family, everyone. It's one of the reasons why resilience is so important at the moment, because resilience gives us some tools that we can use to shift out of level 3 back down into a low level 2, or possibly even back into level 1, regardless of, or perhaps because of, everything that's going on around us. So level 1 is where we should be most of the time, regardless of what's happening, and resilience can help us get there. Some techniques to help you stay calm. First, my favourite of all time is just breathe. Now, we all breathe automatically. Thank God for that. We don't have to actually remind ourselves to breathe normally. But one of the things that happens when we get stressed is our breathing changes. Instead of breathing calmly, slow, deep breath from our diaphragm, from our belly, we tend to breathe more shallowly, more rapidly from our chest. So a simple, really simple technique. If you find yourself starting to have a reaction, your brain's got nuts, it's just heard about something, it's like, wow, it's triggered a threat, level 3, warning, danger, danger, is just stop what you're doing. Preferably turn every device off so that there is no incoming information for you. And if it's safe to do it, close your eyes and spend 60 seconds just breathing. So inhale to a count of 6. Hold that for a count of 6. Exhale for a count of 6 or 7. And then pause. And then repeat. You do that 2 or 3 times, that's about 60 seconds gone, and you will feel better. It will start to bring your brain, the front part of your brain, back online. So breathing is beautiful. Sometimes expressing your feelings is also a great way of being able to deal with something that's caused you an emotional response. Now, interestingly, our brain believes, not necessarily correctly, our brain likes to think that if we just don't talk about our feelings, just put them to one side, then we'll feel better because we don't have to actually confront them. I don't have to articulate them, and most of all, I don't have to feel all of that stuff, because that's really scary and yucky. But the reality is exactly the opposite. And one of the things that we do know, particularly about human beings, if I have a strong emotional reaction to anything, if I try and suppress it, it will come back. It will come back eventually. It's either going to erupt at some point, and often at the most inappropriate time, or it will manifest itself in some sort of illness or dis-ease within my body because I haven't dealt with it. So finding a safe way to express your feelings can be another brilliant way of staying calm and helping to maintain more resilience. The third one I've got there is self-awareness. It's almost like a no-brainer. We should all commit to spending more time finding out about ourselves. Pay more attention to what's going on up here. And this is not always easy to do when we're so busy and there's so much noise and confusion and uncertainty. And if you've gone from working in an office environment with some people that you really get on well with, and you get to do the commute and commute home, and then at home, you know, you've got some kids and a partner, and then the next day you get up and you go off to work again, and all of that sort of out of the way. Now, you're stuck at home 24/7, everybody's in the same space. That can be really hard. But being aware of what's going on in your head is hugely important, because the minute I'm aware that my brain is starting to have some thoughts around something that one of our kids did, and that's triggered a reaction in my brain, I just want to grab hold of them and lock them in a cupboard because they're driving me nuts. As I become aware of that, I can just hit the pause button. I can take a breath. I can say to myself, how fascinating, I didn't see that coming. Put a smile on my face and then ask myself, so how can I respond in a positive way right now? And then move forward. Self-awareness is hugely important. Another really great technique for staying calm is creative visualization. So I'm just checking on time. Yeah, we're doing okay. So if I can share a quick case study with you. Sports scientists, about 40 years ago, I think was the first time they did, and the study's been replicated a lot since then, would hook up an athlete to a whole bunch of equipment so they could monitor brain activity and muscle firing, all this sort of stuff. And they would get the athlete to, let's say, run a 100-metre sprint, and then they would monitor brain function, brain activity, whilst the athlete was actually running the sprint. Then they'd get the athlete to sit in a chair, close their eyes, and just imagine running the 100-metre sprint, sitting in a chair. The same brain regions fired in exactly the same sequence they had when the sprinter was running, but now they're sitting in a chair. So on one level, our brain can't tell the difference between fact and fantasy. So using creative visualization, again, is a wonderful way of becoming calm. By sitting down, closing your eyes, disconnecting from everything, and picturing in your mind, and if you can bring sound in, so much better, any scene that you've experienced in your life where you just felt completely relaxed and calm, whenever it was. Just bring it back into your mind and spend 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes thinking about that. If you find that difficult to do, if the visualization thing's really hard, there are some great videos on, excuse me, YouTube. There's also a website called Calm. We'll put this in the resources for you. And they just have like a video of a stream trickling down through a forest. So it's just this beautiful, lush, green, almost rainforest environment, and the water trickling down and some birds in the background. So if you sit and watch that and listen to that for 5 minutes, that also can help you feel calm. The other thing, chillax. I got off one of the kids. I'm so hip, it's not funny. Yeah, it's a combination of chill and relax. In Mother Nature, with Mother Nature, in person, wherever you possibly can. Again, I acknowledge, I recognise that at the moment for some of us, it's really difficult to find opportunities to be in nature, to be outside in nature. But if you can create some opportunities to do that, please do. If you can do it safely, like in terms of what you're walking on, go barefoot in grass. Walk around on some grass barefoot. If you can do that, reconnecting the soles of your feet with Mother Earth is also hugely, hugely helpful in terms of our physiological health. So if we can do that, even once a week, just for 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, that's staying calm. I would love to talk a little now about resourcefulness. I just like the picture. It's a cute photo of a frog holding on a tree bench in the rain. There's probably some photoshopping there. I don't care. It looks good. And I want to start with a quote about resilience from Naomi Wolf. Obstacles, of course, are developed necessary. It's like anything. If you want to build muscle, you have to stress your muscles. So stress for us as human beings is necessary for us to grow. It's just the level of stress and how we respond to it that really matters. Obstacles teach us strategy, patience, critical thinking, resilience, and resourcefulness. Let's talk about resourceful. A couple of ways of thinking about it. Being able to deal skillfully with new situations. So it's not literally just blundering through, but being able to apply some skill to dealing with new situations, or being capable of devising ways and means of dealing with or responding to a situation. So there's a couple of ways of thinking about being resourceful. A question for you. And again, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the chat box. How have you been resourceful lately? So from today, I have made sourdough bread, sourdough starter from scratch, smiley face. I can actually attest to this because it is in the kitchen just out behind us. And Danette has also made some sourdough bread from the scratch sourdough starter that has been delish, is probably the best way to explain it. Mary, finding online yoga and meditation classes. Beautiful, thank you. Also using technology to stay connected. Yes, we have been exploring some of the more out there functions of things like Zoom and Teams. So one of the ways that I've been a little more resourceful in the last 2 weeks, if I could share, is spending some time with my dad, who's 86 and not a tech whiz. But we have now got him hooked up on Zoom through his iPad, so we can actually have a Zoom call drive from here. And that's been awesome because we've got all of our kids involved as well. Our children have, we have one in Hervey Bay, some in Canberra, some in Melbourne, So we've been able to bring everybody together on using tools like Zoom, which has been fantastic. Okay, let's talk about resourceful people. Some of the hallmarks or characteristics of people who are typically seen as resourceful. One of the things they often do is bend the rules, not necessarily break them, but bend them. Recognising that sometimes for the greater good, I might need to just skirt around the side of a rule in order to get something done that is good for others. Resourceful people will typically look for the common good. So this is not a greed or it's all about me thing. This is how can I do something that's going to help someone else. Sorry, Di, thank you for that. Connecting with Zoom calls. Brilliant. Resourceful people only apologise when necessary. So we don't get into the routine or the process of apologising at the drop of a hat, because we are quite convicted that, or convinced that what we're doing in how we're being resourceful is again necessary for and important for the common good or the greater good. Resourceful people will often burn their boats. Reference to a famous commander whose name escapes me, who took his army on boats to a foreign land to invade, realised when they got there that the other army was much bigger than theirs, but the commander was absolutely convinced that they could win. So he ordered his captains to burn the boats and said to his army, no way home except defeating this army first. That's the only way you're going to get home. And they did. Sometimes we need to burn our boats. Having a safety net sometimes is helpful, but not necessarily all of the time. One of the other hallmarks of people who are resourceful is that they will adapt and try new things. We are open to some risk. We're okay with things not working the first time around. And this in part also comes back to the importance of resilience, because I can bounce back. Herman Cortez, thank you to that, was the person, Herman Cortez. So we can adapt, we can try new things. We often have, resourceful people will often have multiple irons in the fire. So it's literally, we don't literally put all, to use a different cliche, we don't put all of our eggs in the one basket. So sometimes we might want to try something to deal with the fact that we're now all working separately or working remotely. But in the back of my mind, I might have already thought of another idea. It's a little similar, but a bit different. So if this one doesn't work, then we can go with plan B. If plan B doesn't work, then I've sort of got a plan C over here in the background, and we might just bring that out and dust it off and try that as well. And one of the other things resourceful people often do is ask for what they need. And they're okay with people saying no, because they realise that if they don't ask, then people can't say yes. So the important thing to keep in mind, if there is something that you need, ask for it. You can be respectful, polite and everything else, but ultimately be okay about asking for it. So here's some suggestions for you in terms of building resourcefulness. First is just ask better questions. So some of those questions might be, if we're stuck on a particular issue, situation, problem, opportunity, challenge, whatever you might call it, is there another way that we could get an outcome that would be acceptable? Is there another way of getting the outcome that we believe we need? Another question might be, is this outcome actually the best possible result? Could something else be better than that? Who else can help me? Again, if I've got more resilience, I'm much more comfortable and relaxed about putting my hand up and saying, hey, I need help. I can't do this on my own. I'm not really sure how to do this. Can you help me, please? Another question might be, what other options or outcomes might work in the current circumstances? If we know we can't do X, could we do A plus Q, for argument's sake? Another beautiful question sometimes is, what is one more thing I can try? If you've ever been in that situation where everything that your brain tells you it can think of and nothing's worked or nothing is suitable, and we sort of back ourselves into a corner and say, well, I've tried everything, I can't, I've got nothing left. Sometimes the next best question to ask yourself is, what's one more thing I can try? And the last one is, and quick, this is, there is a prize for this. WWMD No, there's not a prize for this. This is too obscure. WWND stands for What Would MacGyver Do? For the young people in the audience, just Google it later on. And yes, I am actually working on getting the same hairdo as soon as I can convince Danette that it's necessary. Sometimes a really good way of being resourceful is to literally put your head in someone else's head and ask the question, what would X do in these circumstances? It can be a way of tricking your brain into thinking differently. It's like a left field. Some other things around building resourcefulness: don't reinvent the wheel. If somebody's already got a wheel and that wheel, it's not exactly what you want, but it would help get you where you need to go, then use that wheel. Leverage your networks. Connect with people, stay connected, ask for help, reach out. Also be completely open to helping people and to giving, so it's not just all about taking, but leverage your networks. One of the other great things you can do is get better. Sorry, I just got a comment back from my wife about my comment regarding MacGyver's hairdo, and the word never has just come up on the chat. I don't know what that means. I'm sure she'll come around. Learn how to find information. Learning how to learn stuff is one of the most resourceful things that we could ever create. The other thing you can do is create a culture of resourcefulness. You can do this in work. If you work in a team, or particularly if you are a team leader or a manager, one of the great things you can do is to start either delegating or just giving your team more opportunity to come up with solutions themselves rather than just giving them solutions. In a family environment, it's the same thing. If a child comes up with a question, helping them find the answer rather than giving the answer is a great way of helping them to become more resourceful. So over time, we can build this culture of resourcefulness. Quick question for you. Based on everything we've talked about, what resonates most for you at the moment around being resourceful? Again, I'd love to hear. Please feel free to share in the chat box. So from today, thinking of other ways to do things and who I can ask to help. Thank you. For Mary, thanks, Mary. We don't have to do this on our own. Hugely important. Thank you so much. Hugely important. We're not on our own. We're never on our own as long as we're prepared to put up our hand and ask for help. Thank you. From Di, thanks, Di. Staying calm, thinking outside the square, asking for help. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, I'm mindful of time. We are actually planning to wrap up a little early this afternoon, if that's okay, because we literally have to. Danette has another webinar after this, so I'm sort of running out of the office so she can come in and set hers up. But heading towards the end, I would love to have you share, based on everything that we've covered in the webinar today, what's one thing, one action that you're going to take after this that is going to help you, or that might help you build more resourcefulness or help you maintain high resilience? One thing. Mary, laugh. Thank you. I love it. Danette, more self-care, nature walks. Brilliant. Di, start meditating. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay. Resources, don't stress too much about being able to remember all of these now. We will send the links out to you later this afternoon or this evening. Some good TED Talk with Tony Robbins and his wife recently about being resilient right now. Emily Esfahani-Smith's TED Talk about more to life than being happy. I love the TED Talk. I think you'd really enjoy it. Interestingly, around resourcefulness, if you're not a fan of scary movies, then ignore Alien, perhaps watch The Martian if you haven't seen it before, because again, there's some great stuff in there about how we can be resilient. A fantastic book by BJ Fogg called Tiny Habits. Highly recommended, highly recommended. And a slightly different take on Resilience and Resourcefulness by John Kabat-Zinn, which is Full Catastrophe Living. It's also a brilliant book. Okay, heading towards the end. If you are interested, we are running a number of other webinars over the next couple of weeks, and we are trying to change them up to respond to what people need most at the moment. If you are interested in those, again, we have a free webinars page on our website. I'll send you the link out in the email as well. And in addition to the disruption webinars that we're running at the moment, we also have, we've been doing this for a couple of years, we have a webinar once a month that we run. Again, all of these are free. We offer them in the hope that they will be of help to someone. We have another webinar happening tomorrow. Thanks, Danette, for reminding me, about communicating through disruptive times. That's starting at midday tomorrow. If you go to our website, or look, if you just want to reach out to us through social media, I'll make sure we send you the link. But that webinar is on tomorrow, Thursday, midday, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Okay, that's it for me. Conscious that I've thrown a lot of information at you. Really grateful for your time today on the webinar. I didn't want to give you just final opportunity if you have any other questions that you thought we might address or that we could address before we wrap up. Okay, I'll take that as a no, you don't have any more questions. So again, thank you so much for being on the webinar with us today. We're very grateful for the opportunity. I hope it's been helpful. Please look after yourself, take care, stay connected with others around you, and we look forward to engaging with you on another webinar or in some other platform in future. That's it from us. So bye-bye for now. Thanks again. Have a great week.